Start recording. Dat is een goed idee.
And the cool thing is, we don't have to clap right now because everything is synchronized already, which is great.
I kind of like the clapping though.
Okay. You do the clap, I'll start. Welcome to the Ramjet Anvil Show, to episode 1. I am Martijn Zandvliet, and I'm the lead developer on Volo Airsport, and this is, well, you're best at introducing yourself, so...
I'm Frank. I also work on Volo Airsport. I do...
well, lots of things.
Lots of things, actually. All the kinds of things that you are doing, except maybe... The physics stuff is mostly your thing.
Yeah, but you do tons of programming and... well, all the things that I don't get around to is stuff that you get into. The two of us, we are mostly the development team on Volo Airsport. There's also Michael Manning, who does audio and sound design, and he's really wonderful at that. But most of the time, it's just us.
Yeah.
And so, what is this show? What is the Ramjet Anvil Show? Well, Ramjet Anvil is our company, of course, but. Lately, we've been thinking that we've been doing some things wrong. And it's mostly due to communication. Because here's the situation, right? We're making this game, Volo Airsport, and you love it. We know you love it because you tell us so. And that's great, thank you for that. But it could be that we have a long time in between releases. And so the problem that we have there is we're working in the background.
It's true that we have a long time between releases. It's like a crazy amount of time. And we want to make up for that in a sense. We want to open up about our development process and what it means to make this game and all the hurdles that we have to take.
Yeah. And it's to get a sense of a trust going, right? Because we're an early access game, and what you would really like to see is that this thing grows slowly and steadily into the game that we all want it to become. And with early access games that do this well, you see a very regular release schedule, and that means you know what's going on, and you have that level of trust that you need to say, I'm going to buy this game, and I'm going to invest my time in playing it, because I know it's going somewhere. But we're often finding ourselves in a place where, like, you can talk a little bit about this, but where we can't do this regularly, and so we need to do this regularity in a different way. We're not going to just be talking about the what we're doing, because you see devlogs that do that, where Frank would be like, I fixed this bug, and I would be like, I introduced this feature. But that's not all we're going to be talking about.
We're going to be talking about how it is to be a game developer, what it means to be a team, and what we think Volo Airsport is and what it should be, and how frequent we change our perspective on this. And that's not to say that we don't know what game we want to make. It's just that we are constantly refining what it means to play Volo Airsport.
Yeah, it's a huge, very iterative, very cyclic process, and a huge part of this should be the communication with all of you to make sure that it all goes in the direction that we all feel it should. And this part has been missing, so see this as kind of the missing link.
Well, it's not missing. I mean, we have discussions on the forums, and we know stuff that people like, we know stuff that people don't like, but we feel that there is something missing, definitely.
Yeah, I would say that we definitely, while we have been doing those things, we haven't been doing them nearly enough.
Right.
So that's why we do this show, so we can just blurt stuff out that we've thought about a lot, and then you know what's going on, you know what we're working on from, say, every 2 weeks to 2 weeks. And even though it might be multiple months between a release, you can be sure that it's going in the direction that you want it to go. But let's talk about what we're actually going to be talking about today, which is multiplayer. Right. And like we talked about this a little bit before the show, and you had a great way to put what you find so intrinsically interesting about multiplayer, not just in Volo, but in general. Like, what is about multiplayer for you?
Right.
Does
so multiplayer for me is not limited to games. It's just about anything that you can do with 2 or more people. And what I was thinking about, what I most like about the concept of doing things together is the spark that you feel when you look someone in the eye, and you get the feeling that you have
a shared connection.
A shared connection, right? You have just seen or done kind of the same thing, so you know what's in your head is kind of similar to what's in mine, so we have a very strong connection for a brief moment.
And you don't have to talk about it, right? I don't have to express to you what it is I just felt, because I can just see that the same thing happened for you, and we can just be both happy about that, the fact that happened.
Yeah, because you've just watched or did something that was the communication part already, so you don't have to talk about it anymore, and that's beautiful. I think games can some games at least can provide this great feeling of interaction. But what I get the most out of is like going to a concert together.
Yeah.
If you see like a great drum solo or you hear a great song, and you look at the other person that you're with, and you get that spark, right?
Oh man, that was awesome!
Yeah,
like that kind of thing. And then in games, it's not just something that some other drummer did on a stage. It's something that you did together. And in Volo Airsport, that could be you did some great stunt together that you thought you might want to try, and then you do it, and you fail the first couple of times, and then you do it, and you both do the synchronized barrel roll or whatever, and then it works. Perfect. You don't need to put it into words, but we all know that feeling. So that's what we want to make.
Yeah, and I feel like the competition part of multiplayer games kind of defeats a bit of that feeling. Actually, a large part of that feeling, because you're more focused on defeating the other player instead of working together to get like a shared emotional state.
Yeah.
So that's very different. I don't think that competition is bad at all, but it's different from what I like the most about multiplayer.
Yeah. This also links into just how we want to actually build more of a community around the game, because we realized the game itself is important, and we need to make that, and we need to invest a lot of time and effort into doing that. But at the same time, the game is just a small kernel, a grain of sand around which a community forms, and you need to look at that whole in order to be able to make all those individual elements work well. And we've been so focused on just writing code all the time and not explaining what we're doing and not really listening to what everyone thinks about how we're doing things and what things are going into the game, and really working with that both multiplayer, writing the multiplayer code, and doing this, they're all more from the holistic perspective of there's a game and there's people playing it and there's us making it, and that together is what we should be focusing on.
Right. And you can easily lose track as a programmer. Just
we're really good at
working on the code. Yeah. So we're trying to fix that now with starting with this show.
Yeah. So let's talk about multiplayer. Like, you've done a lot of work on multiplayer. What have you been working on? I want to know. Tell me.
Oh, all the nuts and bolts that are things that you don't really see in a sense. So when I send a message,
like what kind of message?
Oh, right. So let's say you are flying somewhere and your computer has to send a message to another computer saying, I'm right here. Right?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of ways you can do this in Unity, and we tried a lot of different things, but what I've been working on is a framework in code that makes that sending of the message easy. So you can have one Unity object on the one hand and another Unity object on the other hand, and you can send messages between them even though there's a network. That shouldn't really matter.
And just to fill in the blanks, if you've not been following the development of Volo Airsport for that long, Unity is the engine, that we use, the game engine, and in it are objects. And an object can be a complex object, like the entire Volo character, with all of the physics and such. But it could also just be a little bouncing ball, or a visual effect. Those are all objects, and in multiplayer they need to be linked together, so they need to send messages. And you've been working on the layer that does that.
So this is what we would call in the network world replication, where one object on a computer has to be synced with another object that represents the same thing on another computer. And the way you can do this is by sending these messages that I was talking about.
Yeah. And then you get into the specifics of how you do this for a fast-paced game. And that's where it starts getting really complicated in a way that we really underestimated before. But at the same time, that is a really huge and worthwhile technical challenge for us as programmers. And that's, for example, latency. And you know this from shooters. Like with Team Fortress, the famous example, if you're starting to get into network programming, is like you have one person, and that person is running out from an open field to behind cover. And there's another person sort of aiming through the scope at that person running into cover, and the person with the gun goes, "I'm pointing at your head, shoot." And on that screen it looks like you made a headshot, so you should get the score for that, and another person should have dying and should go into the respawn loop and whatever. But when you click and you fire, it takes a certain amount of time for that message, like I fired, to go to your computer.
Right.
And that hit to register. And maybe by the time that message arrives on your screen, you'll already be behind that wall. And then who's right? Like, was that a headshot? Or could that not have been a headshot? And there's no unique silver bullet answer to that. You need to, as a game designer, not just as a network programmer, you need to deal with it. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about how we're dealing with that with Volo Airsport?
So what you described is a really complicated problem, but also a really well-studied problem for shooter games, where you shoot someone in the head on your screen, but on the other person's screen he's actually not there.
Yeah.
Right. So this is possible because there's a delay between sending a message and receiving a message. So what you actually see on your computer is never the truth. So we actually, in some ways, don't have this specific problem of hitting someone, in a sense.
Yeah, well, thank God we don't have shooting in the game.
But we do want to be able to fly next to each other. And that means that when a person says, "Hey, I'm here," and it takes like 100 milliseconds for it to arrive to the other computer, it means that the other computer needs to extrapolate that result and say, "Okay, you said you were there, but based on your information I know that this message took 100 milliseconds to arrive, so I'm gonna predict that you are actually here."
Yeah, you must be a little bit ahead of where you said you were.
Yeah, and that's a technique that allows you to create an illusion of flying next to each other.
Yeah, I guess that's an unfortunate truth of the problem. If you do multiplayer really well, it'll just appear like you're playing the same game, and in most cases it'll work out just fine, and you won't even notice. But if you start actually looking at what's happening on my machine and what's happening on your machine, there will be differences, and sometimes they will be significant. It's all about the illusion of me looking to my left and seeing you flying there, and you looking to your right and seeing me there.
Right. So to solve that problem, we went pretty far, I could say.
And we're not done.
We're not even done.
But what did we do?
Okay, so we actually started out with the whole messaging stuff that I talked about, and once that worked, we started looking into, okay, how can we predict where the player would be on the other computer? And we made a little game where you control an airplane, and it would have this prediction for this airplane that would make it work even if you have like 250 milliseconds latency. it would still predict pretty much where the player would be on the other screen.
This was a really useful prototype. With a lovely name, we called it the Rigid Body Party, and that name is now still very dear to me, even though it was kind of arbitrary at the time. But what was really interesting there is that we were, I guess, looking at, we have this physics engine, and how can we start playing with it in multiplayer? Because sometimes we might need to, maybe the prediction that we made on one end is wrong, and then we need to rewind a little bit to what we knew was the correct thing, but that was in the past, and then re-simulate from that point forward with maybe you record 1 second of user input, and then you can go back, and that's where we started running into difficulties with Unity.
So what you're now explaining is even more complex than than we were talking about before. So this is the situation where a new message comes in. The player is predicted to be here, but actually from the new message, the prediction appears to be wrong, and the new prediction is like it's here or something. And then you still see the player flying here, but he's
supposed to be over there.
Supposed to be here. So you don't want to have this like snapping, because then that would look very weird on screen. Since everything is already an illusion, we try to cheat a little bit here as well by smoothing slowly over time to the correct position until they are on the same level again.
Yeah.
Until you get another message and it says, oh, well, actually I'm over there. Okay, and then you smooth again. So it's more cheating, and it helps to make the game look good instead of you flying around very trippy and weird looking.
Yeah. But what you get is a situation where your machine is somewhere else, and it's playing a version of the game, and then my machine is playing a version of the game, and I get messages from your machine that says, hey, on my end it looks like this, but there's a delay in that, so that that's a window into the past. Mm-hmm. So in order to make that reconcile with what I'm seeing, I need to say, you might have been over there. That's my best estimate of where you're probably at right now. Right. But I don't know that for sure. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be making mistakes. For example, it might be that I assume that you're just flying in a straight line, but you started pitching down. Mm-hmm. And then, like, on my computer, it'll have looked like this, but you went this way, and then we need to reconcile those two. So actually what we show on screen when you play the game, eventually when multiplayer is in there, is kind of an in-between state of those, and that on itself becomes yet another representation of the same physical simulation. So you see all kinds of different versions of this physics world, and then that actually means that you, from the game engine and the physics engine that you use, you need a lot of control in order to be able to manage all those different representations of the game world. And that's, like, we've worked with Unity for a long time, and it allowed us to get the game to the point where it is now, which is, we couldn't have done it without it. But now that we're here and we want to do multiplayer, it's like, okay, we need more control over the physics engine, and we're not going to get it. So that's where Bullet comes in, I guess.
That's where Bullet comes in, yeah. So Bullet is actually an open source physics engine, which means it's free to use. And you can even look at the code and change the code if you want to. And yeah, that's absolutely great. That means we can do so much more than we can do with Unity's physics engine. And one of the things that we can do with Bullet that we cannot do with Unity is actually we have control over time. So we can actually make time pass in the physics world without real time passing.
Very important.
So that allows us to do prediction. I mean, if you want to know 100 milliseconds from now where is the player, you don't want to wait 100 milliseconds because then you're behind already. So you have to simulate these 100 milliseconds within, like, maybe a very short amount of time, only the time that it needs your CPU to process it. To know, okay, what's the actual predicted version of this player.
It becomes the tell me where he would be in 1 second, but tell me now, not in 1 second.
Right.
That's
and that's the problem with Unity. With Unity, you always have to wait the real amount of time before you get the answer.
Oh yeah. Oh, and that's a good segue into some other things we tried. Like switching to a different physics engine is quite a rigorous thing because we built the entire game on one physics engine, and the game is quite far along now. We have a long way to go, but it's quite far along now at the same time. So why would you switch so late in the process from one to the other? Well, we tried the alternatives, and effectively what that means is that you're trying to recreate the behavior of the physics engine that you're using, but with your own code, so you can use it in the more flexible way that you need. Right. But that means you're just effectively rewriting that physics library, but we're not physics engine writers, we're not physicists well-versed enough to be able to do this, and that's a really bad process. So in the end, the code you end up with is some kind of crude half reconstruction of the thing you're trying to actually use. Yeah. And that's going to show shortcomings, and it's going to mean that you have to put in a lot of hacks and a lot of duct tape, and that might work for a while, but what we know from working this way is that usually it ends up biting you in the butt later on, and so now we're just like, I think we have to make the switch to Bullet. So that's what we've been working on the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, we had to bite the bullet.
We had to bite the bullet.
Okay, that's a fair point.
No, I love it. Like, this show should be full of puns. So let's make that the big starting pun for this episode, Bite the Bullet.
Okay, so we
This could be the episode name.
Right. We did bite the bullet.
Well, we're biting the bullet now, right? We're first we were very cautious, and it's like, should we switch? How much work would that take? Mm-hmm. And eventually, the only way you're going to find out like how much work would it be to switch to Bullet, and is that actually feasible, is just by starting the work in doing that, and then eventually you'll get a good feel for just how far that will take you, what that gets you, and that's where we are now. We are getting Bullet into Unity, and thank God there's an open source project now from someone who has sort of started getting the ball rolling there. But that's not as...
Quite literally, actually. There's a demo in the project with a ball rolling in Bullet physics.
See, puns. It works. But at the same time, it's an open source project largely managed by one guy who just worked on this in his spare time. So it's not going to be as fleshed out and crystallized and easy to use as Unity's built-in physics engine is. So we're going to be making a lot of modifications there. And again, which modifications do we need to make? Well, just try and recreate Volo Airsport with this in the basics, like just get that character up and running and flying, and then see what kind of modifications you need to make to Bullet and around Bullet in order to get that game structure there. And it's starting to fall into place.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm really impressed with the way Bullet works. It's really flexible. You can do basically anything you want with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least more, you can do more with Bullet than we want to do with it in the end with Volo Airsport, and that's a good sign. Like, it has room for us to grow, both from where we are now and later if we want to do something else.
Because I want to ask you what this means for parachutes, because I saw some videos and I played a little bit with the parachutes, but I haven't really looked at it very thoroughly. But this Bullet engine is gonna change your parachute code. Yes,
the change to Bullet physics is gonna change a lot of the actual game code, and so there's two people on the team, and we have to prioritize. And so let's play out the scenario where I start working on the parachutes right now, and I flesh that logic out, and we put the models in, and we put it in game, hook it up to all the controls, make the options configurable, make the procedural parachute creation thing available in game. It's really fun stuff. All of this, by the way, we'll have to show more of this in a future episode. Definitely. But here's the thing. If we build that up to that level and then we switch physics engines, that's more work later down the line because we have to swap all of the physics code out of the parachute system and recreate all that.
Right.
And there's just two people, and we have to say, that's not a way we can realistically work right now. We first have to do the physics engine switch, then get multiplayer up to a point where it's stable enough that we can start building on it again, and then we can start thinking about parachutes again. So it's, in a way, it's a really... it's not nice that we have to do these things, but like plans change. And when we started the game like several years ago, it's we just see what happens. And some things you can foresee, and other things like this you just have to run into and roll with.
Yeah, we didn't really envision multiplayer in the beginning. Maybe vaguely, but still not in detail.
And even if we did, like, would we really know that we'd run into this problem with the Indeed physics engine? I don't think so. I don't think we'd see that.
No, probably not. No, that's something that you learn, and you now we know, and now we know what's possible and what isn't.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Actually, this is a really fun thing. I like talking about this, but a lot of people will know Rocket League. Rocket League had this very same thing happen during its development, and they've talked about it in interviews where they just said, we worked with the Unreal Engine for a while and the physics engine that's in there, and I think it's Havoc, but it's the same problem where you need more control over the physics engine to do really tight multiplayer action, basically.
Yeah.
Same problem for us. They were just a little bit earlier with it, but look what they were able to do once they made that switch successfully. Rocket League is a brilliant game, and it works really well.
Yeah.
I'm really amazed by just how solid that feels on a technical level for something that is dealing with tons of latency and varying PC hardware that it's running on.
Yeah.
We want to do the same thing. We have to.
So, coming back to your parachute story about you first want to have bullet working and then start again on the parachutes. I understand that. And the same is actually true for multiplayer itself, because we decided at some point that a single player game is also a multiplayer game with one player, and the reason we did that was because it would make the code much easier, and because we know that single player will be a multiplayer game, we can make certain assumptions about how things are set up.
Yeah.
And that was very important. A very important change to make before doing anything else, because otherwise we would have made new stuff assuming that it would be single player based, and then later having to retrofit it in some way to multiplayer.
Yeah.
And now we don't have to do that anymore.
So it's relatively late to be able to make some of these changes, but at the same time, now is always the best way to start doing them, because it's only going to be more difficult later on. I think with that said, we've talked for like half an hour, and we need to start wrapping it up.
Okay, let's wrap it up then.
Okay.
See you next week.
Yeah, in 2 weeks. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But yeah, seriously, if you're still with us, thanks for watching and thanks for playing. This is the like, comment, and subscribe section of the video, and please do all those things. That helps us so much, and we'd love to hear what you think. But also, like, we're game developers, and Volo Airsport is actually out right now on itch.io, which is a great new indie platform that you should see, where you can get tons of nice indie games. Yeah. Getting the game there, if you're planning on it, and it's by far the best way to support us, because that's what keeps us going in the end. Yep. Get it from itch, great platform. But we're also on Steam, and where are we? We're on a lot of places.
We're also on Humble Store.
Yeah, we are
actually. But I think if you buy through itch, you support us in the best way possible, because we get the most money from itch, and you also get a Steam key anyway. From itch. So if you want to support us, please buy through itch.
Yeah, and as
otherwise,
I said,
just buy through Steam if it's more convenient for you.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Anyway, that's it for this week. Send in your questions. Next week we'll get to them if there's a couple of interesting ones, and I know there will be. God damn it! Yeah, this is going to be hard. Anyway, next week, more Ramjet Anvil Show. Until then.